The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody, and thank you for attending today's webinar on project time tracking and billing. So my name is Todd Miner. I'll be your presenter today, and for those of you in the US, I would like to go ahead and wish you a happy Memorial Day. And for today, we'll try to keep it fairly short. We'll be aiming for about 45 minutes, potentially run a little bit long or a little bit short on this demonstration. And with that, let's just go ahead and dive in. So if this is your first time attending one of our webinars, then I'd just like to give you a little bit of information about the GoToWebinar software. So at any point throughout the presentation, if you have any questions or if you would like for me to dive into one area in detail a little bit further, go ahead, just put a question into that box, and I'll go ahead and take breaks every few minutes or so, and I'll answer whatever I can. And just to get things kicked off, so I have a little bit of idea about who's attending today and what features I should cover, can I just get an idea of everybody attending? Is there any of you who are Google Apps users? Would you like me to explain a little bit of how the Google Apps integration comes into play with Apptivo? And yeah, I mean, if you are Google Apps, just go ahead and let me know with the question. And if not, I will go ahead and get started. So real quick, let's just talk about who this will be beneficial for. So once again, it's a fairly generic introductory presentation, so it's valuable to just about anybody, but specifically if you're a small business owner or independent contractor, somebody who's doing the end-to-end job inside of your business, or if you are in a larger firm and you are either like a project manager or an engineer who's actually working on and executing the individual projects, or basically anybody in the professional services industry who has a need to actually manage a project for the services that they're delivering to their customers. And a little bit of quick info about me. I'm a product manager here at Apptivo. I've got a technical background. I'm currently located up in the Bay Area, right near the Apptivo headquarters, and I do a lot of deployments. I help set up and train people on how to use the Apptivo platform, just provide general support, and I'm also kind of the interface between the customer base and our engineering team. So let's talk about what this webinar is going to cover. So as I mentioned, this is going to be a general webinar. It's going to be introductory for those of you who are brand new to Apptivo. I'm going to give a quick introduction to what Apptivo is, but this is certainly targeted towards somebody who's already kind of gone through and you have a little bit of an understanding of what Apptivo is and how its apps work together and everything. And then I'll dive into what apps are specifically in use by this whole project management, time tracking, and billing flow. Of course, it is configurable, but I'll show you like every possible app that you might be using in this solution. And then we're going to talk about the project billing options. So depending on your business model and or the type of project that you're running, you might have to bill your customer differently. So I'll talk about the different options we can do as far as setting up a project and how those all kind of work. And then we'll go ahead, we'll take a dive through one project. I'll show you kind of some of the common features, just like how to do basic task management, how to put in notes, documents, things like that. And then we'll run through, we'll do one demonstration of a whole flow where we take like a sales opportunity, then we move into a project, and then we bill for it at the end. And I'll just kind of talk about a couple of the options that are available there. And at the end, if there's any additional questions or anything like that, we'll just run ahead and I will walk through anything that you guys would like me to. So with that, let's talk about, actually looks like I forgot a slide in here. Let's talk about what Apptivo is. So Apptivo is an online suite of business applications. It's a generic platform that's designed for any business, but the idea is that a business can come in and you can pick and choose which applications from our program that you want, and you can piece them together to form and automate any process that is needed by your business. So there's several different kind of high-level solutions of how people piece together and use the Apptivo apps. And today we're talking about project time tracking and billing, which is sort of one of our solutions. So you can see here we have like a lead to invoice flow, which includes project management. But there's also many other different types of flows. So some companies are selling a physical product, so they're going to use our product sales solution. Some companies have to take their workers and dispatch them off to a third-party site and track the labor in addition to the materials they use. Those people are going to be using our service delivery solution. This solution, Project Time Tracking and Billing, is specifically for somebody who is offering professional services, needs to manage the tasks and activities going on in delivering the service to their customer, and then potentially needs to go ahead and bill their customer at the end in order to charge them for those services. And what we can do is we can actually set up in Apptivo anything from a basic solution. So we could just do only project management. And I just need to create a list of tasks and I need to manage when those tasks are done. And then I could add on any other areas of the solution that I want. So for example, I could just do project management. I could track all my tasks, input my hours, and then I can include invoices. So I can bill them for those hours at the end. Or I could put together a much more complicated solution like we see right here, which is where I start off as a sales lead. I'm logging all the calls I have with my customer. I eventually get to the point where I can email them an estimate or a quote of the amount of time and the price that I think it'll take to complete their project. And then I can move into a project, track the time, and then finally go for billing at the end. And there's a million different ways you can configure the Apptivo system. Today we're going to focus on this one solution. But at a very high level, that's kind of what Apptivo is. It's this flexible platform that can be molded into the needs of your business. And one of the great things is when you get online and you start, so if you're coming in today and you're like, oh, wow, this is a lot of applications, you can get started with just 1 or 2 apps. So you could set up, say, just projects and invoices, and all of the apps are included in each plan. So later on, if you would like to go ahead and add estimates or add your sales apps, then it's very, very simple for you to just kind of add those on, and they're all integrated right out of the box. So now we're getting down to the specifics of, well, which one of these applications are used for this specific sales process. And I suppose I kind of answered that just a moment ago, but the primary apps involved in project time tracking and billing, it's mostly centered around the Projects app. Go figure. But we have the Projects app, and also it's very closely interfaced with the Timesheets app, which is not listed here, which is only usable in some scenarios where you want to have like approval on the time that gets submitted for your project. So it's especially useful in a scenario where you're subcontracting work, where maybe you have some internal employees completing work and some completing work outside. In that case, I can generate a timesheet from the projects and then generate an invoice. And then otherwise, the core apps, obviously, if you're going to bill for the project, you need to have the Invoices app. And if you want to track the sales activities beforehand, you could go add any of these other 3 applications, which are all part of the CRM and the financial suite. So with that, let's talk about the billing options that are available. So depending on the exact type of project that you have in your company, you might choose to bill the customer slightly differently for it. So this could be dependent on your company internally. This could be dependent on the type of project that you're offering, or it could be based on the customer's terms. But for each individual project, you get to specify what type of billing that you would like to have. So first off is just a non-billable project. You could just use the project to manage an internal initiative. You can be tracking your hours. You get all the features of the project's app, but it simply would never generate an invoice at the end. You would never collect payment for it. And then we have the 3 billing options for projects you are going to get paid for. So the first one's very simple. It's just I can assign a flat rate for the entire project. So I can say I'm going to build your website. I'm going to charge you $5,000 no matter how many hours it takes me. And when I go and I generate an invoice for it, it's going to say the project name and $5,000. Very straightforward. And then we have milestone-based billing, which is similar to flat rate billing, but it's not a single price for the entire project. This allows us to set up various phases in the project. So we could have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and I can assign a flat rate to each phase. So I can say once phase 1 has been completed, I will issue an invoice for the project, and phase 1 is 33% of the entire project value. So it would just include the project name, milestone 1, and the value of 33%. So what, about $1,400, $1,500, something in there, that area. And then lastly, I have time and expenses. So this is probably the most common way that customers will bill for their projects. And what this means is your employees will actually be able to log their hours that they spend on each individual task. And we can also include the billing rate that each employee might have. So one employee could have different billing rates depending on which project they're working on. And then at the end, you're able to generate an invoice either from the project or from the employee's timesheets. And it will use that billing rate to automatically determine the proper price to charge the client. And all individual tasks are brought over to the invoice with the amount of hours and the billing rate applied automatically, so you get the total value of the project. So those are the 4 different ways that you can bill for a project. And we're going to hop into the demonstration now, so I'm going to walk you through everything. I will come back to this slide at the end. I just want to bring your attention real quickly to the ways that you can get support. So obviously Apptivo is a very large platform. There's a lot of things that you could do with it. So we're never going to be able to cover everything in a 45-minute session. So one thing I wholeheartedly recommend is checking out our answer site. We have tons of great documentation on here. So if you have any questions after the demonstration or you just want to refer back to something in a week or two, it's very, very simple for you to find what you need. So you can just come to the answer site, and if you wanted to know something like, well, okay, well, what are those project billing options again? I can just punch it in here, and then Apptivo is going to give me all the relevant answers. So now I can hop in here, and I can see exactly what I need to learn. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and dive in. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of a quick tour of Apptivo, and I'm going to show you how to customize and set up Apptivo to work for like the specific scenario of project time tracking and billing. And then we're going to go look at a specific project, and I'll show you a couple details that are included in there. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my demonstration account. If you didn't know, Apptivo is completely cloud-based. All you need is an internet connection. You're always going to access it through that one login portal. If you're a Google Apps user, you can actually log in directly from Google Apps, but I didn't see anybody say they were a Google Apps user in today's demonstration, so I'm going to go ahead and skip those. But yeah, I mean, just a reminder once again, if you are a Google Apps user, let me know in the questions right now, and I will go ahead and cover those areas and talk about those integrations. All right, so real quickly, just in case you're a new user, oh, actually, so we do have a Google Apps user. Perfect. Yeah, so I would be able to log into Apptivo from Google. So inside of Apptivo, the first thing you're going to notice is we have the navigation bar across the top of the page, and we have a couple links here on the left. So these links on the left are your central dashboards, and these are going to show you information across your entire business. So not only can I look at a list of tasks across all of my individual projects, I could potentially have a task inside of like a sales opportunity or inside of an invoice. And these lists are going to show me 100% of my tasks no matter where they sit inside of the system. So the idea is that when I'm putting an individual task in, I'm probably going to be looking at a specific project. I'm going to input the task there. But when I'm looking for what I need to work on, so when I come in the morning and I'm drinking my morning coffee and I need to say, well, what task do I have on my plate? What am I working on today? That's what these homepage lists are for. So I can come here, I can see every task regardless of where it's from, and then I'd be able to click in, and I can see, okay, well, this one's associated to this project. I can flip over, and I can see this one's from a different project. So I'm able to cross-prioritize my tasks regardless of where inside of the system they might lie. And that's the same for each one of these homepage dashboards. These are all common features that are available inside of each app. So this is actually what I'm going to show you in one moment. So to get or to put in a task, something like this, I'm almost always going to be doing it from inside of the app in the context of something specific. So let's say a specific project, for example. And the way I'm going to get to each of these individual apps is from the navigation on the top of the screen. So this list right here, this shows me every application that's currently available in my system. But one thing that's important to note right here is this list is customizable for each person in your company. So you might potentially have a couple different employees. One of them is like the CEO, one of them is just an engineer who works on your projects, and one of them is like your accountant. And each one of those people has a different role in the company, which means that they might need to access different applications inside of the system. So for example, your accountant might only have the financial applications, while your CEO would have every single application like we see here, and maybe the engineer only has access to the project management applications. So we can configure all of that within the Employees app. When we set up a new user, we get to give them security roles. But then once you've given access to an app, your user gets to choose which apps are available. So first of all, if they don't see an app here, or if you want to add, remove one of these apps, so let's say I never use the Documents app, I can control everything from the App Store. So up here in the upper right corner, if I click on this link for App Store, it's going to show me a list of every application that is available inside of the system. So here I can browse through each category. I'll see each app that we have available, and I'd be able to add or remove whichever app I want. So in that example, if I wanted to remove Documents, I would just click this button, and then it would pull it off of my list. So that's how I can get apps inside or outside of this navigation right here. But I can also customize these links depending on exactly what I use the most. So regardless of where I go in the system, it's always going to leave these links up top. So let's say that I'm using project management. The Projects app is my most popular app. then I can actually make projects the first one that appears here. So I can just click on More, Customize My Apps, and the number 1, I can just go grab Projects. So each user gets to kind of surf through here and pick the exact setup they want. So now they're able to hop around and get to the applications that are important to them as quick as possible. So you can see here I just added the Projects app, and I clicked on Projects up here, and it brings me into the app. And you know you're inside of an app when you're able to scroll around and you have this navigation on the left and the bar across the top that don't change. So if I ever want to get back to this, what we call Projects homepage, which has a little news feed and a list of my recent projects, I can always click on the name right here. It takes me back. And one thing I want to point out right here real quickly is the fact that although we have 50 applications, they're all very consistent. So for example, if I'm looking at the Projects app, you see I've got the left nav, the bar across the top. But if I click on the Customers app, for example, the same exact information exists, the same components in the same location. So what you'll notice when you're going from app to app is that everything's highly consistent. So I'm going to show you a couple of these common features, like where the settings are and how to use like the calendar. And you can actually apply this knowledge to each and every application. So even when you go adopt Invoicing or like the sales apps later on, you're going to be able to have the same information applied to that area as well. So let's hop back to the Projects app. And I'm going to give you a quick tour of some of the basic project features. So for this example, let me bring up an existing project. And once you're looking at an existing project, you get this series of tabs across the top of the page. And what this is on the Overview tab, we have all the unique information about this project. And then all of these other tabs are the individual features. So here I've got the basic information, like what is the project name, when's it due, and I can select the billing type, which we discussed. There's a couple billing types earlier. And I'd also be able to enter in any custom details. So I can create my own fields of information. So for example, if I have a contract signed with every single project, I can track details about that contract directly here in the project. And these fields are all configurable. So I can actually go into the settings area. I can use what we call our custom attributes feature. And I could go add a text field, for example, if I wanted to. I can name the text field whatever I'd like. I can add another value to this dropdown if I'd like. So I get complete flexibility over the data stored inside of each project. So I've got that project. On the Overview tab, I can edit all the basic details. It'll also show me the invoicing status. So I can see like if I have any timesheets that are submitted and approved, but I haven't invoiced them for invoice form yet, or if I've already invoiced half the value of the project, I'm going to get those basic details right here. And I'm also going to get some other information, like what customer is it linked up to. So this is one thing actually I should take a moment to explain is in our system, we have all these individual apps, and they each do one specific purpose. And the idea is that they all get to talk to each other. We're an integrated platform. So for example, when I create a project and I link it up to a customer record, I'm not just typing in the customer name. What I'm doing is I'm actually linking it to a customer that's over in a different application. So we have one app called the Customers app, which is your main customer database. And you'll actually be able to link all of your projects and your timesheets and your invoices and everything back to the customer. So I can always bring up a complete history of information from that one customer record. And I'll actually show you that in just a minute. But you can see right here, like if I wanted to link to another customer, I can actually just search my existing customer database and go grab the one that I would like. So that's the Overview tab of the project. And then we have all the other features. So there's a couple features that are unique to the project management application. And then there's a set of common features that are available in every application. So first, let's talk about those common features. Now, these common features are these tabs right here. We see Newsfeed, Calendar, Call Logs, Tasks, Emails, Notes, and Documents. You're going to find these features in every single application in Apptivo. And specifically, these first tabs right here, these are what we call our activity tabs. And these are the same tabs that we saw back on the home page. So here, let me explain each one of these features real quickly, because these are very, very commonly used. This is what you're going to be doing repeatedly inside of a project. So the Newsfeed. The Newsfeed is a complete revision history of everything that occurs inside of your business. So we've defined every event that can occur in the system, whether somebody completes a task, whether they create an invoice, whether they log a call against a customer record, whatever it might be, we've defined an event for it, and we'll show it right here whenever that event occurs. So when I'm looking at the newsfeed for a specific project, this is showing me all of the newsfeed events that are somehow related to this project. So whenever a task inside of the project gets changed, or whenever generate an invoice from the project, any details like that. It'll show you who completed it. It'll give you a link to the relevant information, and I could go and I could comment on it. So we can actually interact based on these newsfeed events. And what we see is this is specifically related to the project because we're looking at this event on the project's newsfeed tab. But it's important to understand that all the information in this project newsfeed is also brought back to that homepage newsfeed. This is simply a different filter of it. And I can actually filter these newsfeeds in many different ways. So let's say I wanted to understand what one specific employee is doing in the newsfeed. I can actually hop on here. I could filter down by Frank, for example, and here's everything Frank has worked on in this specific project. But I can always go back to the main homepage, and let's say I wanted to see everything Frank has worked on across all of my projects. Well, now I can filter by Frank, and here's everything that he's done. So now I can see like all of his timesheets. I can see everything that Frank has done inside of the system. Okay. I'm just seeing if I got a link back to the project here. Yeah, so you can see he's done some modifications on projects, but nothing the one that we were just in. So let's hop back to the Projects tab, and we'll go back in here. So we were just looking at the newsfeed, and the next item is the calendar. So we've set up our structure like with the calendar and tasks and everything very similar to what everybody's used to, the industry standard. So the way that Outlook and the way that Google does it, where they split apart your appointments and your events from the internal tasks that you have from the calls that you're actually logging. So an appointment is exactly what it sounds like. It's just an in-person meeting. I'm able to define the start, the end date. I can search my contact database as well as my employee database to determine who's attending this appointment. For those of you with Google Apps integration, we have a bidirectional sync with all of your calendar events. And one really cool thing is, let's say you invited your client. You search for your client inside of your contact database, and you invite your client. It'll actually send them a Google Calendar invite and put it onto their calendar, give them all the reminders, everything like that, and it does it for you automatically. So it's very, very handy. And once again, if that calendar event gets put into here, then it always aggregates back to the main page. So I can come back onto my homepage tab now, and if I check my calendar here, I'm now going to see that calendar event pops up. I could click it, I could go view the details, and I'll be able to run off-site. So the idea here is I might go into the project, I can schedule my client review meeting, but if I've got that Google Apps integration, I just bring up my cell phone when it comes to next Monday, and I'm able to see when I got the appointment. I go out and I handle it. And this functionality with like the data sharing and being shown on this homepage tab works exactly the same for each one of these features. So what we notice is in the project, the appointment is just one type of activity. Basically, all these features are made up with either reminders that you set for yourself or with like a history, a log of the communication that you had with the customer. So I can go create an appointment. I could also log a call if I spoke on the phone with the customer. And of course, I can create tasks, which is what project management is all about. So I get start date, end date, I can give it a status, I can categorize it, I can prioritize it, all of your typical task management features. And then we have email, which this is pretty cool. Actually, we can connect with an IMAP email account. So Google Apps Users works, but also if you have Exchange or GoDaddy email, anything like that, you can connect. And what we'll do is we'll actually automatically read your email and we'll associate it to the relevant contact and customer records inside of Apptivo. And I can also link up an email to a project. So if I wanted an email that was relevant to this project, I could either just say compose email and I deliver it from here, and you'll notice it's associated with this project. Or I can go to my central email tab. I can just be reading my general inbox, and if, let's say, this email was relevant to that project, I can just click on the email, hit add, and go search for that project and link it up on my own. So very, very straightforward as far as accomplishing that. And the last two features, which are common, are notes and documents. These are very, very heavily used inside of project management. The notes, it's a very, very simple feature, but very valuable. It's exactly what it sounds like. Just I can hit create note. I get a rich text editor, so I can punch in bullet points. Maybe I have a meeting with the client. I get a couple notes, or I learn some more details about the project that I want to share with my colleagues. Or maybe I just want to provide a status update. So one example, Apptivo, we use this internally for all of our client projects, and every night we run through each project and we put the status update into the notes of that project. Lastly, we have the Documents tab. And this is once again very commonly used. Many times when you have a project, you're going to have some sort of requirements document, or maybe you have some resource files from the client. Maybe like you have get their logo or some sort of requirements document from them. And you also might have internal deliverables. You might have a contract that you sign for the project. Many different scenarios where you might want to link documents. So the way that Apptivo handles it is we have three options here. One is the default option is I can just surf my computer and I can upload a document. So I could grab an image file, a Word document, a PDF document, any document type that I might want. I can just grab it and upload it right here. Or if I have either Dropbox or Google Apps, I can use one of these other integrations. And what these do is it doesn't actually upload a copy of the file into our system. It will just put a link to that file inside of your other existing document storage system, and it'll just put a link right here. So if I click it, it'll open up the most up-to-date version over in Google or over in Dropbox. And also, if you do this, it doesn't take any document storage space inside of Apptivo, which it is limited based on your plan. So here you can see some of the documents I've just uploaded straight from my computer. So if I click on this one, it'll download the file to my computer. But in the case where I grabbed a document from Google, for example, I click on this, it'll actually just open up a new tab and take me into the appropriate Google Doc. And it works the same exact way for Dropbox. Okay, so those are the common features of the project management system. The only other common feature is what we call our 360 tab, and this thing is really cool. So this is one of the benefits of the integration where I can quickly see all the related data to this project. So let's say, for example, I wanted to see all the invoices that I've generated from this project so far. So if I have like a milestone-based project and I've issued 5 out of 15 milestones, I can click Invoices and I can see those 5 invoices right here. I could also come through and I could see like a list of requirements that I have for the project or a list of cases. And this is just in the Projects app. This actually becomes much more valuable in the Customers app. And let me show you why. So let's go to the Overview tab of this project. And as I mentioned, it linked up to another customer in like a different application. So whenever you do that, if I go look at that customer, I can actually click this link. It's going to take me into the Customers app. So I go into a different application, which we can see right up here. And now I've got these different tabs. So in the Overview tab of a customer, I have all the basic details about that account. So now I've got like their website, their credit rating, their public contact number, address, details like that, which aren't necessarily relevant to the project, but I could find them right here. But I've also got this other series of tabs. So now I have all the appointments just related to this contact. I have a news feed just for this customer record. But here, when I look at the 360 tab, this actually shows me everything linked up to this customer. And in Apptivo, almost everything links back to the customer. So if I wanted to see a history of projects for this customer, I can select projects. Here's every project I've ever run for him. If I want to see every invoice I've ever sent to the customer, I have invoices here as well. But I could also do that with all the other apps. So here's all their sales leads. Here's all the opportunities I've got for them. Here's every work order I have in progress. So it's a really powerful tool that lets you just bring all the data together and lets you quickly see what else is in the system that might be relevant to what you're looking at right now. All right, so that's the tour of the common features. The last thing I want to show you is these couple tabs right here, which are unique to the Projects app. So basically, the whole concept of a project is it's a way for you to manage many tasks put together. So we have this task tab in every app. So if I just had a quick little task like write a sales contract, I don't need to manage a project for that. It's just one task. But if I've got 50 tasks, like build a custom web application for this customer, and I've got several different phases, like first I need to gather requirements, do some consulting, then I need to create some designs, I need to decide what it's going to look like, then I need to have my engineers go build it, and then I need to have a team go and test it and make sure that it works properly. So a very complex initiative. So that's what we'll bring in Milestones for. So yes, I could come in, I could create 50 tasks right here, I could give them all a start and an end date, but you're going to want to group them somehow. A lot of the time a project occurs in phases where you can't start phase 2 until phase 1 is done. Or a lot of the time you want to build based around phases. And that's where milestones come into play. So what a milestone allows you to do is it has its own start date, end date, and assignee, person responsible for it. But inside of the milestone, I can link tasks up to it. So let's say I click on this discovery milestone right here. You can see I've got 3 out of 5 tasks completed. It has its own start and end date, everything like that. And this, it'll actually just give me a list of tasks. So here what I get to do is if I hit add tasks, it's actually going to show me every task that's already created in the task tab. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually just bringing those tasks and I'm adding kind of a layer of organization on top where I get to group them. So I could either grab an existing task in the project that wasn't organized yet, or most of the time you're going to be building your milestones and tasks at the same time. So I would just hit brand new task. I could punch in my details, determine whether it's billable, provide an estimate, everything like that. And then that would become part of this milestone. In addition to being able to group tasks into milestones, you're able to do one more thing inside of projects, which is called a subtask. So if you have one task with many other dependent tasks belonging to it, what you can do is when looking at any task, you can actually have it expand to show all these individual subtasks. So if I click on any task inside of a project, it actually has its own area for notes and documents. So like let's say if I had a design I was working on and I wanted to get some feedback on it, but it wasn't the final deliverable, I could upload that in progress document to my task and then assign the task to somebody else, ask for some help, and then later on I could go attach the document to the main documents tab of the whole project. But here I could go and create additional subtasks. So you can see here, like I have to get access to their account before I can create their YouTube account. So maybe I created a subtask down there. So I'd be able to add an unlimited number of tasks, group them underneath this one task, and then this one task is grouped underneath a milestone. So lots of different ways for you to organize. Basically, the way you should look at it is depending on the number of tasks, you may need more or less layers of organization. So like as a rough rule of thumb, usually what I throw out to people is if you have less than 10 tasks, you don't need a project. Just put it on the task tab. If you have more than 10 tasks, you should use milestones and track them inside of a project. So you group your tasks into milestones. And if you have more than maybe about like 10 tasks per milestone, then you should consider adding subtasks underneath those individual tasks. The idea is that you always want to keep like short little sprints or phases in your project that allow you to continue to make progress, and you don't want to ever get bogged down in one. So it's always great to kind of break it apart and better organize the various tasks involved. So these other two tabs, the team tab is pretty straightforward. Basically, this is where I can define the billing rate for everybody. So when I'm putting together a project, I get to organize my team. So I just get to search my existing employee list. And I can add any employee, and then I can determine how much their hours are going to be charged for. And it should be noted that this only applies if you're using the time and expenses billing project, because then we're talking about actually logging our hours and charging for them. And the last feature here, the scope tab, basically we have a separate case management system, which is like a trouble ticket system. It's called our cases app. So a lot of the time you'll initiate a project or you're going to have problems during the middle of a project. So you can record that customer complaint from the customer service team and track it against the case. And we also have one application just to manage requirements, like project or product requirements. So I can put in an individual requirement like this application must load in fewer than 2 seconds. And I can attach the requirement onto this scope tab. Okay, so that's the tour of the general features. The only other feature I'm going to show you is how to actually log hours, and then we'll dive into a specific flow. So regardless of what type of billing, I noted that you can log hours in any project. And what I mean by that is sometimes you're logging hours because you want to track the amount of hours and bill the customer based on those hours. But even in this scenario where you're not billing the customer for the hours, you might just want to know how much time your company or your employees are spending internally on these projects, so you can do profit and loss calculations internally. So for that, when I'm looking at any task in the system, so for example, generate code requirements for Camera project, I can always click on it and I can go view more details. And when I'm viewing the details of this task, right down here at the bottom, I have this work log tab. So from the work log, I had two options of inputting time. One is I can just hit create, and I can do this after the fact. So I can say I wrote up the requirements. I could say I started at 9 a.m. and it took me 3 hours. So I can put it in after the fact. The other way I can log time is actually we have a built-in timer. So let's say I come in the morning and I'm about to start working on this. I can just hit start timer. I'm going to write the requirements. And then what it'll do is it'll just start counting upwards. So now I can go off, do my job. When I'm done in a couple hours, I'll come back here. I can just hit the stop button, and it'll tell me how much time that I just spent on that task. So then that would be used for billing. So the idea is when you're completing a project, your employees are going to be coming in here. They're probably going to be going to that homepage dashboard. They're going to find the tasks that they need to work on. So they'd be coming in. They'd find their task. They would log their hours, and eventually they would complete the task. So then they would edit the entire task, and they would mark it as completed. And they're going to do this over and over for each task that they have involved inside of the project until eventually your project is completed and you're ready to bill. Okay, so now let's talk about a specific flow. Let's initiate a project. Let's select the billing type, and then let's go ahead and invoice for it at the end. So one quick little thing is earlier I showed like, okay, well I can take a sales opportunity or an estimate and go to a project. So I'll just show you that flow real quick of how that works. So let's say, for example, I have like a sales opportunity. And inside of here, I'm able to bring up, there we go. So we got like a support contract. So what I can do is I can actually track individual services inside of here if I would like, or I can just generate an estimate from it. So the way Apptivo works is even if you're in like a different module, you can always move on to the next phase, and it'll take all the information from what you're currently looking at, and it'll slide it on for you. So in this example, I have the generate button, and you notice I can take an opportunity. I can go straight to a project, or I could create an estimate first. So if I hit estimate, it takes all the information I had, such as the customer that was selected, any other details. It'll put it in here automatically, and then I'd be able to type in any services or products that I'm going to be using, and I could email this estimate out to my customer. Of course, I could also start off in the Estimates app, and if I have an existing estimate, I can convert the estimate over to a project. I can go straight to an invoice if I want. Got many different flows. So this is what I was talking about with like the configurable system that can flow data throughout wherever you want to go. So for example, I could go estimate and generate a project from it. You can see here, now I'm ready to create a brand new project. So let's go ahead and let's create the simplest of projects, a flat fee project. So I just say this was, I think, max color. Let's just say this website design, provide the basic details. When's it going to start? Let's just say it's going to take us about a month. Give it a priority, give it a status, all those basic details. And then we're going to say project flat fee. So let's just say this is a $10,000 project. So very, very simple. Key in any extra details I have, but obviously these are not required. Okay, so I'd hit create, and it's going to go ahead and generate that project from me. And I just created a blank project. I didn't put any details in here. So you notice I have no milestones, I have no team, no nothing. So normally I'd come in, I would add the individual team members that are a part of the project. I'd probably step over, come to milestones, I'd create a couple phases of milestones, and then I'd go and create the tasks. So let's just create a couple quick ones where maybe we have a discovery phase first. That ends in about 2 weeks. And in the discovery phase, we'll just put like one task. So we've got like the client meeting there. I just want to get something in here to show you guys. And then I'll create a second milestone, and we'll just call this one development, for example. And that one will complete right at the end of the project. And in here, once again, I'm going to add a new task. Okay, so now I've got a project. I put my team member on there. I've got my couple milestones. They each have one task. Normally, your project's going to be more complex as this than we've discussed. But the idea is I'd go through, I'd be in here, I would look through each one of my tasks. I'm coming through, I'm completing all my tasks. I'm just getting all my work done. So whether I'm doing it from this milestone page, or whether I go to my task tab and look them up here, or whether I go to my home page. The idea is I'm looking at the tasks and I'm completing the tasks involved in the project. Eventually I hit the point where I'm done with this project. I've completed every task in there. I'm ready to rock. All my milestones are done. It's just a matter of billing the client. And we make this very, very simple. So there's two ways I can invoice the client from here. The most common one is right here. I can hit generate and just go straight to an invoice. This assumes that the person generating the invoice does have access to both the projects app in addition to the Invoices application. So this definitely differs based on the size of the company. Usually a smaller firm, yeah, you're going to give access to everybody. So I could just hit Generate Invoice. Takes me over to the Invoices app, copies in the correct customer information, shows me the project name, shows me that flat rate value. I would have the ability to adjust it here, like let's say if I negotiated something different. But very, very straightforward. And I can take this invoice and I can email it straight off to my customer. And kind of a different topic here, but you can see all the basic details of the invoice, completely customizable as far as how it looks. And it even sends them a link where they could go ahead and pay that invoice instantly online. So very, very straightforward. These are just our standard invoicing features. The other option is I could have gone straight to the Invoices app. So let's say you're a larger business and your accountant does not have access to project management. They can come to their Invoices app, which they will have access to, and then let me actually get to the normal URL. And they can hit Create Invoice from Project. So then they would just search for the project. I think that was Max Keller. I can recall the name. Yep. And then when I hit that project, it'll do the same exact thing. Grabs the project name, grabs the value of it. Very straightforward. So that's a flat rate billing. That's the easiest, the simplest of projects. Let me just show you the other two types. So I could also create a project. One thing I should note is we have a project templating system, very, very commonly used. So inside of the settings, I can go to project templates, and you can see I've got a couple templates here. So I could have one called basic website design, and you can see I can have pre-built milestones with their tasks involved. So I can actually generate a project from this milestone. It'll take the team I already have defined. It'll take these milestones, and it basically just saves me a bunch of time. So I can hit Create Project from a project template, and now I just get to select that basic web design project, and I can create a new project. So let's just say this is the Minor Tech website. So this one, once again, we'll make it last about a month. I don't need to key in all these details. But let's make this one milestone billing. So this is, once again, it's a pretty straightforward billing type. It's all flat rate. But this time we get to define the billing rate for each individual milestone. So when I hit Create right here, it's going to take a moment because it's reading the template. It's actually generating a new project based off of all that. So once I'm done, I'll be able to come to Milestones, and I can see my milestones are already included there. And all I'd have to do is run through each one of these and like reassign them to the proper person if it was different in this project or anything like that. But what I can do is when you're going to see whenever I create a new milestone, now I get a fee. So I could say this is like the final acceptance from the customer. I'm going to charge them like $5,000 just at this milestone when it's completed. So you'll notice each milestone has a status with it. So the idea is when I hit Generate Project, or Generate Invoice, sorry, it's going to take over any milestones that have a completed status that have not yet been invoiced for. So it'll remember which milestones you've invoiced for, and then it'll just check, and it would include each milestone as an individual line item with the price that you defined there. So once again, pretty straightforward. But let's go ahead. Let me show you the more complex version, which is time and expenses. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to use the same template again. Basic web design project. And I'm just going to repeat an old project name. And I'm going to ignore all that and link it up to a customer. So here, this time, I'm going to select time and expenses. So you'll notice now it allows me to provide estimates. So this is just, hey, originally I told the customer it would cost about $10,000, but that was a quote. It was not a final price. Or maybe sometimes you quote them based on the amount of hours that you think it's going to take. So I can record the estimate just so it's there for later purposes. And now when I generate the project, same exact thing is going to happen. We're going to have those pre-built milestones. We would go through, we'd assign them to the proper people. But the one difference is as far as how you execute the project. So when I have time and expenses, I have to log the hours spent in each task. In the other two scenarios, you potentially could tell your employees, I don't care if you log your hours. I mean, the price is already built into the project. The amount of time you spend on the project doesn't matter. But in this case, you have to log your hours because that's how we're going to determine how much to bill for the project. So here, your employees, they're going to be doing one of two things. One is, in this scenario where you do not require to approve your employee time, meaning you want your employees to log time and they're going to bill for it at the end. Normally, this is more of a scenario where you have like all of full-time employees, you're working on projects, you know that they're very familiar with what they're doing. There's another scenario where you might want to approve all the time coming in from each one of your employees. So like I said earlier, this is really, really common in an environment where you have subcontractors or outside vendors contributing work into your project. But it's also pretty common for internal employees where it's just, hey, this is the way that you validate they're spending all the hours they need every week. Or it's also a way that, for tax purposes, you can calculate the amount of capitalizable hours that are logged by each employee. So then you can go ahead and submit those to the IRS. So what we do here is there's two ways. One is if you're doing the first scenario where you do not require approval, we're going to track all of our time inside of this project. And that's going to be using the same work log features we saw before. So the normal flow is I'm going to log in the morning. I'm going to check out my task list as an employee. I'm going to click on one of these tasks. I can see it's from the Maxilon Web Design project. I'd be able to click more details, and I would log all of my work. So I'd come in here, I'd punch in, and I completed the discovery document, and it took me all 8 hours. So I'd key in my time like that. And all of your employees would do that, and eventually I'd go and I could generate an invoice straight from the project, the same as before. So one thing you'll notice is when I'm looking at a project, it always has the Generate Invoice button, but when I generate the invoice, it's going to read the project billing type for the project and create the appropriate invoice type. So if I hit Generate Invoice on this one, what it's going to do is, so it's actually going to check all my tasks. And one important thing here is even in a time and expenses project, you might have non-billable tasks. So every task that you put into the system, you get to choose whether it's billable or not. So this one where I just logged my time, I want to make sure that this is billable. So you can see here it's not marked as billable. So that's why our software is not going to include it on the invoice. So if I did want to charge the client, I would just check billable. And I should note that when you're setting up your template, you can just define all the proper tasks as billable, and then your employee never has to worry about it. So now that that's flagged, if I go ahead and I generate an invoice from the project, we're going to notice it doesn't bring over the entire project name. It'll actually show me each individual task, which is billable. So if I had 50 tasks here, I would be able to see all of them. And then I could just select the task that I'm going to invoice the customer for. It'll warn me if it's not marked as complete. Sometimes you might bill the customer halfway through the project. Sometimes you won't bill them until everything's done. So it's just a little warning in there. I could choose to leave it as is, or I could say, yeah, mark it as complete. I was done. I just forgot. And then what will happen is it'll bring over the task name. So I might have 50 different tasks right here. It'll bring over the amount of hours logged, and it'll also bring in their rate. So I didn't have the rate defined for Kenny Clark in that project, but if I had set Kenny Clark at $50 an hour, it would show 50 here. So if I have 8 tasks from 8 different employees, it's actually going to show the proper billing rate for each one of those employees. So the idea is that I would have 20 tasks right here. Each one of them has proper hours and billing rate. And then down at the bottom, I just get my total all calculated up. So this is pretty straightforward. This is a straight project to invoice flow for time and expenses. But as I mentioned, there's one last flow that I got to show you. And this is involving timesheets. So what we can do is instead of going straight to an invoice, I can have the process where my employee submits a timesheet to me as the manager. Or we could have like an individual project manager for each project. So you actually get to choose who approves timesheets submitted based on which project it is. So every employee has a manager when you set them up in the system, but also every project has its own project manager, or you could just skip approval completely, but you get to choose who gets to approve it. So either I can say the employee manager or whoever this project manager is, but I would configure that on this project overview. So in this example, the project manager is going to approve all time. So you can see that would be Kenny Clark. And the way it works is every employee, instead of like logging their hours into the task, although they could log their hours into the tasks, at the end of every week or 2 weeks, whatever process that you set, you're going to ask your employees to generate a timesheet from the project. So what they can do is when looking at the project, they hit Generate Timesheet. And from within here, it'll pull in every task that they were working on during the period that you select. So as a manager, you can actually configure what periods your company does. Either you get to define your own periods manually, or I could just say like 1 week or 2 weeks, something like that. So it's just going to search the project for all the tasks that were going on during this period. You can see the one task I had in there. I'd be able to create a brand new task from right here if I wanted to. Or I could say search for somebody else's task and add it if it wasn't already included in this list. And then what you'll notice is it'll automatically bring over any hours that were previously logged. So here's the 8 hours I just logged. And I could either make an adjustment to that, or I could add additional hours in over here and just kind of key in everything I've been working on throughout the week and get it all together. So some employees, they like to track their hours real time as they're completing the task. Some of them, they just want to do everything at the end of the week. Some of them want to create a timesheet, and then they just want to update the timesheet like once a night. So depending on what you would like, they can configure it however they want. And of course, I can add additional tasks. I can, a lot of the time, I'm going to have a much more complicated timesheet than this one task. But basically, once I'm done, I would hit create and submit. This would send an email off to my manager. The reason it says this one's approved is because I submitted it from Kenny Clark, and I'm also the manager, so it auto-approves it for me. But normally, it would send an email to Kenny, and then Kenny would be able to go to a web page, and he can either approve or reject that timesheet. But the idea is, at the end of the week, you might have 8 different employees submit 8 timesheets. Once all 8 of those are approved, we can generate an invoice for each one of these timesheets all at once. So this is back to where like the accountant in the company is going to come into play, and they're going to do this from the Invoices application. It's important to note that if you're using timesheets to bill your customers, you cannot generate the invoice from the project. We must go straight to the Invoices application to generate that. So here, I can click Create Invoice, and I'm not going to do from project. I'm going to do from timesheet instead. And here, what I do is I just type in the customer name, and it shows me every timesheet that has been submitted and approved, but has not yet been invoiced for. So these are the timesheets that are eligible for invoicing. And I can scroll through. I can see which project they all belong to, which customer and everything like that. And I'd be able to just pick out the ones that I wanted to include on this invoice. So you can see here's the timesheet I just submitted, and maybe I'll go grab like one or two of these older timesheets as well. So I can get them from many different employees all at once. I could have multiple timesheets from the same employee. Just complete flexibility over this. Once I hit add, what you'll notice is it's going to take in each one of the timesheet details. It'll take the total amount of hours, and if you had a billing rate defined in the project, it would auto-populate it right here. But of course, once again, everything can be updated on the fly by whoever is completing this invoice. In addition to that, if I wanted to add some extra timesheets, I could go through. Once again, it gives me that eligible timesheet list. But once I'm done, I would just go ahead and I would send this out to the customer. But one thing you'll notice is this doesn't give you the complete breakdown of every timesheet. This is just the summary view. You can see timesheet name and total hours. But when I actually deliver this invoice, it'll include a PDF file that gives a complete breakdown of everything. So this is the last thing I'll show you today, and then we'll go ahead and get wrapped up right about the hour mark. So I apologize about that. Ran a little bit long. But this PDF file, we're going to download it to our computer. And up at the top of it, we're going to see that same summary view where we see each timesheet with the total amount of hours and how much it costs them at the end. But if we scroll down to the bottom here, we're actually going to get the grid layout, which shows you like the complete breakdown, everything that the employees saw when they were keying in their time. So now I can understand each individual task and where this total of 27 hours actually came from. Okay. So with that, we're at the end of our demonstration. Obviously, lots more to learn. I actually didn't get too many questions today, so hopefully you all did find this to be nice and useful. The last thing I'll leave you with is, once again, I'll bring up my contact information, but there is one specific guide that I would like to show you that's very, very relevant to what we discussed today. So you can see I can just Google project time tracking and billing. First result will be our website, and we actually have a complete guide on how to accomplish all of this inside of your business. So if I bring up this, it'll actually have a step-by-step. It shows you that familiar-looking graph, which we ran through in the slideshow. But we've got screenshots of each stage, kind of explains each one of the settings, and also gives you links off to individual pieces of documentation on any one of these. So very, very helpful resource if you get stuck or you want to refer back to it later. And we'll also post up this video as a webinar on our site in a few more days. So with that, once again, here's my contact information. If you have any general support questions, go ahead, send them over to support at Apptivo or talk to our online chat. It's the fastest way to get a result. If you got a little bit more of like a subjective question like, hey, how do I implement this sort of business process? You can go ahead and email me. It might take a little bit longer to get back to you, but I'm always happy to help wherever I can. And I did just see a couple questions come in. So if you got any, go ahead and ask them now, and I'll walk through each one of these. So the first question is, can you show outstanding invoices? And yes, So this is inside of the Invoices app, something I didn't just really cover in detail today because it's really more like billing related. It's nothing special to this process. But basically we have a ton of views of how you can filter your invoices. So I can come through here, I could look at like everything that's been delivered to the customer. I could look at everything where the customer actually opened up that web page link and looked at it but didn't pay it. I can see all my past paid ones. Or we have a view right here. This is just every invoice that's outstanding without a payment yet. And here's every invoice that's outstanding but is also past its due date. We even have some things where you can set up like an automatic reminder system to go out to customers when their invoices are past due. And the next question is, can I bill by pages instead of hours? So in this scenario, what we do is we allow you to completely customize the look and feel of the invoice that goes out to your customer. So while you cannot change the field that appears inside of here, so for example, when I create an invoice with services, same thing if I generate it from a project, it shows me hours. I cannot change this text internally for what my employees see, but I can change what is seen by my end customer. So let's say I wanted to change this to pages. What I can do is I just understand internally that hours is pages instead, so my employees are aware of that when they're entering everything. So I would type in like 3 if it was 3 pages, and then obviously this is my price per page. And then what I can do is I would go into the settings of the Invoices app, and we have an area called PDF templates. And then I can choose which template I'm using, so you can actually manage multiple different templates if you'd like. So you could have like one template which shows pages and one template that shows hours. And I can edit the template. And here I've got a drag and drop interface, so I can remove fields if I want. I could add my own text field if I want. But if I scroll down, I'd be able to find the relevant section. So you'll see here we got one section for each potential type of project that you'd, type of invoice that you generate. So if I just key in my task manually, it would show this, versus if I have timesheets, it would show this. So for each one of these types, I can change these column headers. So let's say on both scenarios, whether I'm manually typing in a service or whether I'm using timesheets, I would like to change it to per pages. So in that case, I can come to tasks. I would just click hours, and I'd change this to pages. And then I could do the same exact thing down in timesheets. So instead of hours, we're going to make it pages. And then what happens is if I hit preview, then their PDF file is going to look like this. So the answer is yes. You can change it for the end customer, but once again, you just have to be aware of internally it's always going to say hours. You can only adjust what is seen by your customer. Okay, so is there any other final questions anybody would like to ask before we go ahead and log off here? Okay, so I'll go ahead. I'm going to stop the recording now, and if there's any additional questions, I'll hang around for just a couple more minutes on mute. I'll go ahead and tune back in and answer if they're there. If not, thank you everybody for attending. Once again, happy Memorial Day for those of you in the U.S., and thanks for using Apptivo. Have a great day, all.